Well, let's see what is a Java method. The majority of you probably has already passed a course C or C++. You know what is function in C++. So, if you don't remember, let's say that once again. A function is a piece of program or some, lines of code that receives an input, will manipulate those inputs based on some statements, and finally it will return an output. So that's a function in C or C++. Exactly the same as the function that we had in mathematics. For example, we have fx equals 2 multiplied by x. So that's a function, right? It will receive an input as an x, it will multiply x by 2, and the final result is 2 multiplied by x, and it will be as an output. So that's a function in C or C++. In Java, we call this notion a method. So method in Java is exactly the same as function in C or C++. That's actually a mini program. It takes some special input and will produce some answer, some output. It will return a value, right? So now that you know what is exactly a method, let's see why we'll write and why we use functions in C++ or Java or methods in Java. The first reason is that when we use methods, we are actually break down our program into small pieces. So when you break down your program into small pieces, writing your program is very easier. You can test your program easier and debug it way easier. So it's very efficient, right? In time and efficient in lines of code that you write. So that's one reason. We call it divide and conquer. The other reason is that we can use those functions or those methods several times in our program. So we write it down once, but we use it several times. We call that function, we call that method several times based on how much we need in our program. Or there are several functions or methods that have been predefined and are placed inside the libraries, and we easily as a programmer can call them. So you see how much using the methods and functions made the job of programmers easier. So when we talk about methods or functions, we should notice about two major points of view. First, a builder of the method. Second, the caller of the method. What it means. When you want to have a method, you should know that you need to create that method. You need to define that method, what that method is going to do, what it's going to take as input, what it's going to return as the output. So it's the builder of the method. The other part is caller of the method. It means when you have the method, when you have defined the method, now in your program, based on your need, you need to call that method. You need to use that method. right? Actually, caller is a portion of the code that you use in order to call or in order to use special method. So that's the general definition of method and why we need method. So let's see in more details about Java methods and see some examples to clarify that in more details for you. Well, so now you know what is a method in Java. Method in Java actually is the same as function in C or C++. So it's good to know that the user of a method is the caller. It means when you are going to use a method, you need to call that method, and by calling, it means you need to give an input to that method, and the method, by receiving the input, will create a final result. Let's clarify this by a very simple example in mathematics. In mathematics, we have functions, right? For example, if x equals 2 multiplied by x plus 5. That's a function in mathematics. So this function can receive an input. It can be a real number, an integer, right? As an x can do some calculation and will return a final result. For example, if x be 10, then f10 equals 2 multiplied by 10 plus 5, which is 25, right? So in programming, we actually say the call f10 returns the value 25, right? 10 is the input for example here for the method, and 25 is the output of this method, the output which is returned by the method, by the function here. So let's see how we can use the methods. First, you need to know that what is the actual or the general format of a Java method call. You need to write down the method name and parentheses, inside the parentheses, the argument lists. This argument list is a list of arguments that are comma separated. Sometimes when you are going to use a method from another class library, you need to call its object name or class name. For example, you need to write down class name dot method name argument name list, or object name dot method name argument list. As an example, math is a class name, and we are going to use a method in this class which is sqrt. So sqrt is a method that receives an input and will return its square root of that number. For example, if it receives 36, as a result will return 6. So let's see how in Java we can use this very simple method. First, we write down math, which is the general class that consists this method, then dot, and then we will call this method sqrt the name of the method, parentheses, and inside the parentheses, the value that we want to give as an input to this method. So you can see several examples here. Z equals math.sqrt 36. So this one will return 6 as a result. Or for example, we have in the next example math.sqrtx. X is 9, right? So you can see that as an input it can get a variable. We have initialized and declared this variable before. As you see above, double x equals 9. So x here is 9, sqrt of 9 is 3. So z in this example will be 3. In the third example, we have math.sqrtx plus y. X is 9, y is 16, so 9 plus 16 is 25, right? So sqrt of 25 is 5, so z would be 5. In another example, we have system.out.print math.sqrt 100. So sqrt of 100 is 10. So as an output, the user will see 10 in the console. Or system.out.print math.sqrt 49. So sqrt of 49 is 7. So 7 will be printed in the output. So they are some very simple examples for methods that you can try them yourself to see the actual results. Well, in the previous slide, I showed you how you can easily call a method. So for example, for a method sqrt, you can first write down the name of the class, math, then dot, then the name of the method, sqrt, math.sqrt. So what if you need to call, for example, this method several times in your program? That's very tedious to each time write down the name of that class, right? So there is a case, a solution for skipping writing down the name of the class and dot operator before the name of the method. How? By importing the static methods of a class. For example, for sqrt, in the beginning of your code, you can write down import static java.lang.math.sqrt. Now, by writing down this line of code, you will have access to this method. And in the next lines of your code, you can easily call sqrt by writing down the name of sqrt. So you see that how much programming is easier now, right? The other case is that when you need to use, for example, all of the methods of a class. So you see, it's very hard to import all of them one by one. There should be a way to import all of them at once. But how? By using the star wildcard character. So you will write down import static java.lang.math.star. Now, by writing down this line of code in the beginning of your program, you will have access to all of the methods inside the class math. In the rest of your program, whenever you need to call a method, you can write down its name. Well, okay, let's write the program for these examples. So, in this program, what we are going to do is we are going to use the sqrt method and print the square root of several numbers. So that's the goal of this simple example. First, what I'm going to do is, here we have several numbers, right? So we need to define several numbers. So we declare and initialize some variables. Double, for example, x be 9, since it's double, 9.0. And I want another variable which is double as well, so comma, y equals 16.0. And another variable which is double as well, so comma, z. I'm not going to initialize this variable. Then I want to say that z be the square root of 36. So z be square root of 36. So here I need to call the method sqrt, right? Since it's the method of the class math, first I need to write math, then dot, and after that, you see, I can see so many, the methods that I have in this class, all of the math methods, right? So here what I need is sqrt. You can see it here, right? And as you see, the input of this method is double, right? So that's why we declared our variables to be double. So here, sqrt and 36.0. And let's print this variable system dot out dot printf. I want to say z is and here z, right? Z is, since it's double, right? So we have %.1f. And next line, right? So if I want to run the code here, let's see what we have as a result. Well, zx6, right? Let's initialize z to be the square root of x. So again, math.sqrt. This time x. And then I'm going to print z, right? So again, okay, let's recopy this here. Well, and run the code. So you see z is 3, right? Since x is 9, so the square root of 9 is 3. Then I want to say zb math.sqrt x equals y. Right? So here z must be x plus y is 9 plus 16, which is 25. Right, the square root of 25 is 5. So here z should be 5. So let's print z again and see the result. Yes, here we have it, it's 5. Okay. And then this time I want to print the square root of 100. So I want to print system.out.print, right? And then a square root of 100 is, since it's double, percent 1 f, and math.sqrt 100. So the square root, it's root of 100 is, as you see here, 10, right? What if we have, for example, if we want to print we have number 625 and we want to print the square root of 625. So again, system dot out dot printf math.sqrt math.sqrt right equals percent 1f math.sqrt, math.sqrt. Right. So as you see, the result is 5. Well, so now you see that how we can call a method by first writing down the name of the class, then dot, and after that the name of that method. So I explained to you in the previous slides that we have another way to call methods, especially in the cases that we are going to call one method, for example, several times. So what was that option? Right. I know that you remember. So in that option, we used import static and that class and that method, right? So here in the beginning of our program, we need to import this class and the related methods. So import static java.lang.math.sqrt, right? Now, by just this line of code, I'm actually importing this class and this method, the method sqrt of the class math, and in the next lines of my code, instead of writing math.sqrt, I can easily write sqrt, right? So here, instead of math.sqrt, I can write sqrt. Or again here, sqrt is sufficient here as well. Here and here, right? So as you see, how much this code is simpler and cleaner compared to the previous one. Just I've imported this method in the beginning of my program, and then I'm calling this method several times just by writing down its name. So now I will run the code, and you see can see the results. So z is 6 for the first one. For the second one is 3. For the third one is 5, right? And so on. Now we know that what is exactly a method. We saw how we can call some predefined methods in Java like sqrt. In this slide, I'm going to show you how you can create a method and what is the general structure of a method. So you as a programmer are responsible to define a method, okay? So the basic structure of a method is as follows that you see. First, you need to write down the modifiers, then return type, then method name, and inside the parentheses, a parameter list. Then you need to open the braces, and inside the opening and closing braces, you need to write the method body. I'm going to explain each part separately, so don't worry if you don't know them. First, about modifiers. So let's see what is exactly modifiers. Modifiers are those properties or restrictions that you are going to put on methods. So that's enough for now that you know that's a restriction and properties. And for now, the property that we are going to use in our methods is static. So here we will use the static as the modifier. Then we have return type. Return type is the type of the output that our method is going to return. So if our method is not going to return anything, the return type should be void. So that's the point that you need to keep in mind. Then we have, okay, here is method name. That's completely obvious. That's a name that you will define for your method, right? For example, whatever this method is going to be, you need to specify a name for that, right? So that's the method name. And inside the parentheses, we have parameter list. So that's a list of parameters. And in this list, the type and the order of parameters are, clear for you. So you will write down each parameters one by one in a special order, right? So inside the opening braces and closing braces, we have a method body. So what is exactly method body? Method body is, all of those statements that you as a programmer are going to write down, all of those lines of code that actually, specifies what this method is going to do, right? So if this method is going to, for example, at the result, return something, in the method body, you need to use the keyword return. And after return, you will write down that special expression that this method is going to return. So here, there is a special point that you need to keep in mind, and that's the type of this expression needs to match the return type that we have here. Okay, so that's all the information you need to know in order to start define a method. I hope it helps you to understand it well. Well, let's see some simple examples for methods. So here, what I'm going to do is I am going to write down two simple methods. One is going to do both of them are going to do some mathematics calculation, right? So the first one is going to receive three integers, add them together, and return the summation of these integers. So what it's going to do is, it is going to receive three integers, add them together, return the summation, right? So that's what this method is going to do, right? So how we can define this method? It's very easy, right? So this method is a public static, right? So I'm going to write it here. Public static, because it's going to, in this one, it's public static, since it's going to return an integer, right? Summation of integers. So here the return type is int. Then the name of this method, so because it's going to add 3 integers and return the summation, I'm going to say, okay, the name be sum. Then here inside the parentheses, I need to specify the parameter list. So the list of the parameters, the list of the inputs that this method is going to receive. That's 3 integers, right? So, for example, x, y, and z. Int x, int y, and int z. Right? Now I need to write my method body, all of those statements, those lines of code that specifies what this method is going to do. So this method is going to receive these integers, add them together, and return the summation. So I will declare a new variable, which is int. Okay, I specify a name for this variable, answer, and then I'm going to say answer be x plus y plus z. And finally, I'm going to return this result, right? Return the summation. So I need to use the keyword return. Return answer. Right? So this is the first method. That's very simple, right? So let's see how we can use this method. So here, I'm going to write down int ab sum 2, 3, 4 and system.out.printf a. So you see the result is 9, right? 2 plus 3 plus 4. So here I have defined a new variable and I have called my method here with these 3 numbers. So that's the call of method sum for 2, 3, and 4. And the result of this call is 9. Let's define another method. So in this method, my method is going to receive 3. It is going to receive again 3 numbers. So that's the input of my method. And then add them together. Divide the result by 3. So that's my method body, right? Adding them and dividing them by 3. And then it's going to return the result. So it's going to return something. I need to use the keyword return in my method body, right? So let's write this simple method. First, the modifier public static, right? It's going to receive 3 numbers, so it's going to return a number, right? So here, because it's going to divide them by 3, it's double, public static double, and the name here, okay, I specified the name for my method to be average. Average, it's going to receive 3 inputs, double A, double B, and double C, right? It's going to receive 3 inputs. So now inside the method body, it's going to divide them, add them together and divide them by 3. So double answer B, A plus B plus C divided by 3. And finally, I am going to return the answer, right? So that's my method. I have defined my method. Now let's create a call for this method inside my main method of my program. So first, what I'm going to do again, I'm going to define a variable. For example, here, let's say it's B. And then I'm going to call this method by its name, right? Average. For example, 3, 6, and 9. And finally, I'm going to print this result, system.out.print B, right? This should be double, right? Because here, what is going to be returned is double. right? So here, as you see, we have 3 plus 6 plus 9, which is 18 divided by 3, and the final result is 6. And here 2 plus 3 plus 4 is 9, right? So I can see the result here, which is 9. So that's a very simple example for defining two simple methods and how you can call those methods in your main program.